Hello and welcome to another episode of the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and coming up on this week's episode, it is the debrief of the East Lancs derby. The Clarets getting a 1-0 draw at home to arch rivals Blackburn Rovers in a very hotly contested local derby. We also assess the end of the transfer window, Burnley's incomings and outgoings, what Scott Parker's new look side looks like, and what our hopes and expectations are for the rest of the season. So, buckle up, listeners. Let's go.
I don't know about you guys, but I was pretty nervous going into last week's game. A few of these lads will have only had a single training session together before they were thrown into our beloved Lancashire derby. However, I got myself on the turf, got myself a team sheet, and I was pretty happy with what I saw. It was a different team and a different performance to the brilliant title clinching win at Ewood the last time out. However, considering the, shall we say, interesting summer that we've had, I don't think it was a terrible performance, and we didn't get beat, so there's always that one. I'll take a point at this time in the season, and I am pretty solid in the opinion that if we're given a few more weeks before this fixture, that it may have been a pretty different story. We obviously opened up the scoring with a great team goal, the cross from Anthony, who I think is probably one of the brightest of our new signings so far. Found Lyle's head in the box. Turf went mental. I thought the atmosphere was pretty good on Saturday, which is always nice for a derby. Followed pretty closely by a great strike, which brought them the equaliser. I think that kind of changed the tone of the game from then on. It G'd up their fans, it G'd up their players, it got them back into it, and it kind of turned it into a proper derby from then on. There was some questionable officiating decisions on both sides. We won't go into that too much, but there was the classic pushing, shoving, strong words, stern words between the players of a derby, and I think that kind of we played into their hands in that way. They seemed to come for a draw, which by all means go for it. They played in a way that we've been known to in the past, and they got the results that we've been known to in the past, and you can't begrudge them their 1-1 win against us at the weekend. I thought with the new signings wise, like we said, Anthony seems like the brightest one so far. I enjoyed watching Hannibal. I thought his energy was great. I didn't think he did anything particularly special, but he seemed like he got into the occasion and he was a Derby Day player. Lawrence seemed pretty solid. Seems like he's going to be a pretty solid squad player. I missed Cullen. And I think when Cullen's back fit, Lawrence definitely going to be more of a squad player than a starter, which is absolutely fine. He did his job on Saturday. I thought Brownhill did great. It was nice to see him back in the Derby experience, and it plays into his hands, and he was a great captain on Saturday. Overall, like I said, not disappointed with the result. Would have loved a win. Who wouldn't love a win over them lot? But at the end of the day, we were a pretty new team with a brand new manager and a new style of playing at the moment, and we kind of threw ourselves into it. We played the way we needed to do, and we kept hold of it at that point when if we'd have played into their hands too much, we may have caused some upset, which we didn't want. So yeah, let's bring on the rest of the season, and on to the next one. Onwards and upwards, up the Clarets.
So on this week's panel, Tom Whitaker. How are you, Tom?
Evening, Natalie. Yes, not so bad. Thank you. How about yourself?
Yes, all good, all good. And joining us back on UK soil is a mustached and long-haired George Poole. George, welcome back to the panel. How are you?
Yeah, good evening. Very good. A bit tired, but hopefully I'll pick up with the enthusiasm from you guys.
You will. Bit jet lagged. You've had an exciting adventure. Do you want to tell our listeners about it very quickly?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was in China on the island of Hainan, which is just on the south, off the south of China mainland. Yeah, amazing island. I was there for the tour of Hainan, which is a bike race, and I was there to interview people and just generally speak to camera, believe it or not. But yeah, it was a good week. Unfortunately, missed the derby, but caught up on the highlights, and we seemed to play well. And
we did.
Still unbeaten.
We did. Still unbeaten. The clock is still ticking, which is really, really good. So on tonight's show, we are talking about that East Lancs derby, how the Clarets performed, what we thought our chances were that we missed, I think is probably fair to say, what our new look side looked like, and then we'll move on to just assessing what the end of the transfer window looked like. In last week's show, we did express some worries about the transfer window, so if you haven't yet caught up with that, do go back one episode, because that is definitely worth a watch, and we'll see how our hopes and expectations have changed since that show. Before we get into the show though, stop. Are you subscribed? Listeners, if you're not, what are you waiting for? Those of you who are watching this on our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button and give us a comment in the show notes. Let us know how you are enjoying this episode. And for those of you who are still old school, like the rest of us are at heart, and listen to this through your podcast provider, do hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode. So, Tom Whitaker, I'm going to come over to you first. East Lancs derby. Cracking atmosphere back at Turf Moor, by the way. A bit unsure as to what our squad was going to look like, but a game of two halves is probably a fair reflection.
Yeah, it's frustrating really, because the first 20 minutes, it looked like it was going to be another sort of walkover. We absolutely paced it in the first 20 minutes, deservedly in front. I don't think we threatened the keeper too much, but we looked like we had more goals in us. Excuse me. And then you just get that goal out of nowhere, and it's a brilliant strike. You just got to hold your hands up with a goal like that. But it just felt like that knocks us back a bit. It became a bit more of a scrappy game after that. And then obviously you get the red card in the second half, and it really did go then to attack the defence. I think Blackburn were pretty much 10 men behind the ball and try and play on the counter for the majority of the match before then anyway. And then after that, it was like all thoughts of the counter were gone. It was just 10 men on the edge of their own box, hoof it out, and I think we just lacked a little bit of fluency, we lacked a little bit of creativity, and we just didn't do enough to break them down. So frustrating. Would have liked to have won. If you'd have said to me the week before, coming off the Sunderland game, that we're going to draw 1-1 and we'll be the better team, I would have bit your hand off.
Yeah.
So there is that, and I think if I was a Blackburn fan, well,
heaven forbid, that would be awful.
Yeah, I don't know where to start actually with the phrase. If I was a Blackburn fan, I certainly wouldn't be celebrating like we just won the World Cup anyway after that 1-1 draw. But I think that I'd be thinking, they've put half a team together in the last 2 days. Half of these players haven't met each other, and we're not even trying to win this game. It tells you a lot about where the two clubs are. I think it is. I can understand why they were happy at full time with the way the game was. Away from home. 10 men for half an hour, you'd be glad to get the point, but to me that was an opportunity missed in some ways for them, as it was for us as well, of course. So
yeah, definitely. I feel probably a even bigger sense of smugness coming off that derby, to be honest, because I think it's their best chance of beating us in the last 15 years, and they didn't even try to do it. It was very similar to the Preston game at home last season, and I've never seen a Burnley Preston game as pathetic as the one that Preston delivered to us, not last year, sorry, the season before. And Blackburn were very much the same. They didn't come with a proactive plan to attack us and to try and win the game. And even when, I think it was maybe about a 30-second spell after they'd scored that ridiculous goal, that they maybe looked like they might try and get the noses in front, but they never really bothered. And to me, seeing just how cobbled together our side was, we'd had players who'd met each other 24 hours before, sometimes that morning, to still show such a level of dominance against them. I just feel like they're going to be behind us for a very long time. George, let's bring you in then, because the game did start very well. It was a little bit of a nervy start, I think. It was a little bit, passing was a little bit awry, which is understandable given that our boys were still finding their feet. But an absolutely cracking goal for the Clarets to kick us off.
Yeah, it certainly was. What a fantastic move to watch back and see so many players contributing as well, from your old heads like Josh Brownhill with a fantastic flick on to the new man himself in Anthony. There was shades of Zaroury really with Anthony, the way he went past the right back and then put a cross in. It was just like Zaroury did a couple of years ago against Rovers for Barnes on that occasion. So really good to see Anthony hitting the ground running. I think from listening to what everybody said, he was probably the most promising of the new signings who played on Saturday. And good to see Foster getting on the end of it. I mean, we're going to talk about the transfers and the rumours that have been awash on social media over the past week. But whatever the truth is there, let's hope there isn't much truth in the reports that were coming out about him. And it was just fantastic to see him on the pitch, making a difference. And I think a lot of people fell into the trap of obviously, well, not believing the rumours, but then saying, well, he's not even that good anyway. You know, 25 million, yeah, for a 4-goal a season striker. Come on, let's not be silly here. He's a good, I think he's lacking one career defining season for Burnley. You know, he had that tricky first 6 months when he came. And then last season he had, unfortunately, his issues with mental health, a couple of fitness issues as well. I think he's begging for a full season under his belt. And I think if he does so, he could very easily be a 15, 20 goal a season striker. So, yeah, good to see Foster getting on the end of it, and a very smart header. A fantastic way to start the game, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I think on the flip side, though, Tom, was it? I'm not sure that a lot of people are excusing their goal as saying, well, it's an absolute worldie. There's nothing that you can do about that. There's no stopping that goal. I'm not sure I'm intending to give them as much credit for that as other people seem intent on doing. I thought the build-up play and our defence in the lead up to giving him that space to score was a little bit sloppy. I don't know how you feel about whether or not that goal could have been avoided.
I mean, there's always things you can do better. You know, we lose the first header. That guy up front for them, he's a big lad. He was all arms and legs. He didn't look a very coordinated footballer, but he was certainly a handful while he was on the pitch. And I think, Vaughan's got a little bit too much room when the knockdown comes in for saying, you know, he's not that far from our goal. But, you know, 99 times out of 100, no one's even going to have the shot there, let alone it flying to the top corner. You know, Trafford's absolutely no chance. I think, you know, sometimes in football, as I say, as much as we could have maybe closed him down a bit more or won the first header or whatever, sometimes, you know, the opposition are just good, or they get lucky. No, that's a bit tight, isn't it? I don't think it was lucky. It was just a brilliant goal, and there's no blame attached to any player there for me. It's
okay, makes sense.
It is what it is. They got all wheeled out of nowhere. It reminded me a lot of Micah Hyde at Ewood all them years ago. It was just the kind of, it was almost a hit and hope in some ways, but it just, so, as I say, if you did that again 100 times, none of them would go in. And I think it showed on Sky, the XG for that goal was like 0.04 or something. Like you know, you just got to hold your hands up there, and I think Scott Parker said it did really rock us back. And on another day, you know, that goes on the roof of the net, or he slices it and it goes out for a throw-in, and we see the game out quite comfortably. But they've, it's a moment of magic. And
yeah, well, I'm not prepared to. You're a lot more generous than I am, Tom. I'm not giving them any credit for that. The defining point of the game, George, was obviously the sending off, and that ended up giving us a little bit of a hard time after that. They weren't exactly proactive up until the red card. After that, it was incredibly difficult game to break down. I just want to talk about the red card actually before we do move on to the rest of the game. This is a new rule that's been enforced this season, and trying to guide the referee or trying to get players booked or sent off or other things and basically inserting yourself into that narrative, shall we say, is very much being stamped out. And for the first time, I don't recall this has happened yet. The second yellow card was for trying to get a Burnley player in the book for a challenge. Red card. Are we a fan of this?
It'll be interesting to see what you guys think. I guess on the surface, yes, I'm a fan of it in that I think it would be nice if the referees in football were treated a bit more like the referees are in rugby, where they're highly respected. They ensure a firm grip over the game. And because they're so respected, you know, you can have innovative things such as the referee cams in rugby, where you get to see from the referee's point of view, you get to listen to exactly what he's saying. If you could get to a point like that in football where we have the same, you know, where players not swearing at referees and doing things like these, then it'd be fantastic for the coverage of the game. But I must say, if I was obviously a fan of, if one of our players got sent off in this way, I would be less than pleased, because look, it's just a bit silly, isn't it? But it's the play. It's on the player's shoulders to bear that responsibility, not on the referee. So good on him for following through with the rule.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point, Tom. It's like, yes, follow the rules if they're going to be put there. My issue with all of this is that I just think that we're just zoning in on the really stupid things that we don't need to. There are so many wider problems in football. There are so many bigger inconsistent decisions. There are huge VAR problems in the Premier League. There's just bigger fish to fry. It's like, why are we getting our knickers in a twist about something like this when there are bigger problems? I think that's probably where I sit with this.
I think for me, the frustrating thing is these things are so inconsistently applied. It's just basically whether the referee wants to give it or not. I mean, the Blackburn can have no complaints. He's on a yellow card. He deserved the first yellow he got, by the way. Johnny just was saying it was very soft. Ridiculous thing to say. But he's on a yellow card and he does this gesture and it's a rule that's a yellow card. There's no complaints. It's not ambiguous. There's no room for interpretation there. But you'll see probably 10 games, at the weekend where someone's done that and they haven't got a yellow card. We've had the example in the Premier League this weekend with Declan Rice kicking the ball away for that free kick. He gets the second yellow card. It's the right decision because he's wasting time. He's stopping the free kick being taken. But at the same time, there'll be 10 people this weekend who kick the ball away, throwing the ball away, whatever, wasted time, and the rest won't have got the cards out. And I think the frustration, if you're a Blackburn fan, would be, why has he chosen that moment to actually give a yellow card for time wasting? Because, let's have it right, he could have sent the whole Blackburn team off for time wasting, especially after that.
That's true.
That one, Pear's got a yellow in the 97th minute. Must have had 2-3 minutes of him just stood about waiting to take goal kicks. But, you know what I mean? It's kind of arbitrarily applied whether or not it's time wasting. And I think that's the frustrating thing with the way they bring these rules in, don't they, at the start of every season. They seem to make a big deal of it for a month or two. We're going to start doing this. We're going to start giving cards for that, and then it fizzles out. I don't have a problem with it really. I think it's time wasting does need to be cracked down on. Diving, feigning injuries, things like that. It needs cracking down on, but there just doesn't seem to be the will from it from the referees, and it's the main problem. And it's the same thing with you were talking there about how the referees in rugby get more respect. If the referees stood up for themselves a bit more in football, they get more respect. How many times do you see a player in the ref space? It's a rule in football that if you swear at the referee, it's a red card, but they never give them. They never even give you yellow half the time.
Is that true? I don't think I knew that. That actually, if you swear at him, you get sent off.
Yeah, if you found an abusive language at the referee, it's a red card, and I can remember people getting sent off for it back in the day. I think it might have even been Craig Hignett. It was someone we played Coventry. This is going back like 20 years now, and we got a free kick or a penalty, and the Coventry player it was either Craig Hignett, it might have been Stephen Hughes thinking about it, but whoever it was anyway swore at the linesman, and he got a straight red after about 20 minutes, and we walked this game afterwards. So this is what I mean about the referees just selectively applying it and just deciding when to and when not to. It's so arbitrary. It's frustrating.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Right, moving on to then, obviously, how the game went after that. I was pretty happy with our performance at half time. The second half was a lot more difficult in terms of just energy levels and attacking threat. Now, George, one of the things that we expressed concern over with the just sheer number of outgoings at Turf Moor during the window was the literally reams and reams of attacking threat going out the door and all of that dynamic play and that promise going out there from a championship level. Yes, I know we caveat that by saying we didn't see that last season. I'm talking about an ability to set the championship alight with just football that's spectacular to watch and impossible to play against. It's really hard to, and there's no point assessing this yet because we simply don't know what this team's gonna look like. But it did feel to me at the game that there'd been a slight decline in quality. Just the completed pass ratio was really poor at times. I felt like we couldn't find our man. Now we're going to chalk that off to being inexperienced in playing as a team. I think that's fair to do. But it's just decisions seem to take that little bit longer, and just the passes that we saw from Vincent Kompany's championship side weren't seen to be being made. What do you make generally of this new look side, and can we expect to see a big shift in the style of play now?
Yeah, this is something we've discussed on the WhatsApp group, isn't it? It's a big topic, and be interesting to throw back to you guys. But for me, this isn't particularly I don't know, an issue, so to speak. I think the decline of quality in the squad is apparent. This isn't as good a squad as the one we had in the Premier League last season, regardless of how well or not so well we did last season. But for me, that's just natural. We've been relegated. We don't need a squad as good as we theoretically had last season. We shouldn't expect to have a squad as good as we had last season, because every relegated team needs to sell players, regardless of whether you have a loan that's been put in the club to buy it in the first place, or whether you're in a different situation. Every club needs to sell players, and we're no different. So we've sold players. We've sold players for good money. We've sold players who, let's be honest, didn't want to be here. And for that, I'm happy. I'm happy that they're out the door. And the replacements, some of them look terrific. Sorry, Sarmiento comes with bags and bags of high praise. Some of them are less so.
He's
good,
also
maybe
so
Josh
dreamy,
Laurent.
by the way. He's so dreamy.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
Not something I can particularly comment on myself, but then Josh Laurent, maybe a player who doesn't have the same quality. He spent his career so far in the Championship and below. But that's not to say he can't be a good signing and help us out. So I think what I'm trying to say is there might be a decline in quality. It might not be as good as 2 seasons ago, but you know what? We can only expect so much. I mean, if you just throw back 10, 15 years, if we were having this discussion about, oh no, our team this year won't be as good as our 105 point or 106 point team from 2 years ago, we'd all be laughing, wouldn't we? So I think we do expect to see a team that's maybe slightly weaker. But at the end of the day, we as I think we've all noted to each other, 2 years ago when we signed Nathan Teller, he was notably not a goal scorer. In fact, that's one thing Southampton fans said. He doesn't score goals. He's a winger, but he doesn't score goals. He then went on and he was instrumental and was our main attacking dynamic threat. So maybe we've got someone like that in the squad who we don't know.
Fleming. Maybe Fleming is that man. Who knows? Obviously, we didn't get to see him at the weekend because he hadn't signed in time.
I've heard.
Could I say actually quick?
I just have to say I've been speaking to Millwall fans and I've heard he's Fleming brilliant.
Oh, good lord. Anyway, moving swiftly on. God, Tom. I can't honestly. I'm stuck by that. Right, hang on a second. We've got a little bit of a technical issue going on with this recording, so just bear with me a second. Tom, what do we? Okay, so we talk about the incomings and outgoings. Did any of the, obviously apart from the ones that George has mentioned, did any of our new boys at the weekend particularly impress you? Are there any that you weren't as keen on?
I don't want to sound Fleming miserable, but
oh my God, can we stop this?
No one really stood out to me as much as they have for other people, I think. So I've seen Laurent get a lot of praise. I thought off the ball he was really good. He was aggressive. He was very physical, perhaps something that we're missing with Burge not in that midfield. But I thought on the ball he didn't look great. I think he just kind of slowed the play down a little bit. Thought Anthony was probably the pick. Really good, really direct. It was really good fun to see him running with the ball. But perhaps lacking a little bit of end product. Obviously, apart from the goal he set up, he'd certainly be the biggest positive for me. Sarmiento, couldn't really judge him. He's coming on and he's got 10 men in front of him every time he picks the ball up. So I'll reserve judgment on him. And obviously we've got Fleming to come. So yeah, I wasn't blown away, but I'm reserving judgment really. I'm not forming an opinion based on one game where they've had probably one training session or not even one training session. They've only just met the other players they're playing with, and they're thrust into a massive derby, a lot of pressure, a lot on the line, and it was a difficult game to play. And Blackburn made it really difficult for us. They didn't give us space, they didn't take time after the first 20 minutes. It wasn't really a game in which attacking players necessarily had the opportunity to show what they can really do. I would have thought as well. Oh, I forgot to mention Hannibal. Sorry, I was just sorry.
Oh, I love him. Oh.
He was good, wasn't he? He's put his about. He never stops running. I'm not sure.
He's going to be a crowd favourite.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think Fleming will be in that number 10 behind the striker when he's in. I don't think that's really Hannibal's position, but you could see him and Brownhill or him and Cullen as a good midfield pairing. There's a lot of just the energy with the thing that really stood out. And then you could get a cheeky 5-2 on Hannibal to get a yellow card before the game. Hope everyone got.
We all looked on that.
So I dare say more notes come in as well.
Yeah, I think there's probably scope there with Hannibal as well. If we do need to go in a more of a 4-5-1, particularly in trickier games away from home, you could almost stick Hannibal in front of Cork and Cullen. Cork's not playing anymore because I was reading the outgoings on the same time. I've got too many C's. Cullen and Brownhill, and maybe see if that works a little bit rather than playing him in that number 10. I think that might be something we could look at as well. Just to particularly, I think at times on Saturday, particularly when we're trying to break down a side, for me, we lost way too much possession in the centre of midfield. And I think there's going to be games against those kind of sides where we're going to have to try and find a bit more bite. And I think Hannibal can probably do that in a more central role. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, as I said, I don't think he didn't stand out to me anyway as being particularly creative at number 10. And
no,
the thing that really stood out to me, especially in the first half, was how well we won the ball back high up the pitch. I thought Laurent and Hannibal were the ones that really stood out doing that, and Koleosho as well. Actually, I know George was mentioning earlier about how the players who didn't want to be here, he was happy that they've gone. But I think I don't think anyone who's saying that is saying that about Koleosho. There was obviously all the talk that he wanted to go to Wolves, but he's here and he didn't play like he was sulking. Obviously, the same goes for Foster. I thought his work rate deserves a mention. I think he found it a bit tricky, especially in the second half. Blackburn's left back did have a good game, but that was one of the really pleasing things for me. I think, especially in the first half, how high we pressed and the intensity that was there. You could tell they got the derby. I think some of the players who come in.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So I think looking at how we're feeling then about Scott Parker's new look side, it's probably worth mentioning, obviously, that there is still some markets that do have some windows open. So there is a possibility that we might lose, we might still lose Benson unless this injury from the weekend. I'll come back to Benson in a minute because I'm still a bit about this. But let's have a quick look at how the transfer window did finish then. I'm just going to put this graphic up here. Apologies, I couldn't get a landscape version for those of you watching this on YouTube. I couldn't get a landscape version out quickly enough before we started recording. So you know what? You're just going to have to deal with our little faces behind it. Here we go. This is the summary of where the summer transfer window ended out. Assignon and Bru Larson, we knew about their loan deals expired. We lost Odeberg, Berge, O'Shea, Murich, Alderkiel, Zarori Twine, Veghorst, Peacock Farrell, Bastian, Charlie Taylor, McNally, Goodmanson, Vigeroux and Cork. We also sent out on season-long loans Amdoune, Obafemi, Cherlinov and Costello. That is one eye-wateringly painful list for most Burnley fans. But we'll come on to a minute about those ones that we think are probably the more significant of those. But that is some list. Now, on the plus side, we were worried about Burnley's fans. We were critical of the board's decision to sell all of these players, but our chairman did deliver with some fantastic signings, particularly in the last 24 hours before the transfer window closed. Coming in, obviously, Steve and Trezor came in making their loan deals permanent. We signed Hannibal, Worrell, Hontudje. I still can't pronounce that. Hontudje. I don't know. That's what Richard says, isn't it? That's how he pronounces it. Pires, Sambo, Hlagke, Lauren and Green. And we also brought in on loan the players we have mentioned already who made their debuts at the East Lancashire Derby. Sarmiento, Anthony, Humphreys and Fleming didn't, and Fleming as well. Fleming probably the headliner of those incomings. George, from those, well, I guess let's go for it this way. Out of those players that went out, which ones to you are the most significant that we will miss the most? I'll put this back up so you can have a look.
Thank you. I think the ones the ones we'll miss the most out of
Get back behind the thing, you.
it's Wilson Odeberg. You see his name right there at the top, class. I want you to repeat his name after me. Right, okay. I'll carry on.
Okay.
So Wilson Orderber will be a big. I can't take myself seriously here. Will be a big loss. And as well, Sanderberg. Both players of real quality.
There you go.
And the same can be said for Zarori as well. So I think those are your headline acts that are missing, and I think fans are understandably, let's say, a bit fed up towards the end, towards the latter half of last week before some players were brought in. It's Audebert and Burge, really, isn't it? That are the key ones. I'm just looking down that list now, and who were we selling towards the middle of last week that was getting people so wound up? Because I'm not being funny, but you like some Zarori, Audi.
I think it was volume, George. It was volume. It was like, every single. I don't think it was. I think it was all the outgoings, and then the rumour mill and all the in the know accounts on Twitter were all like, "Oh, somebody's coming for Foster, somebody's coming," and it was just like, I think Vitinho was probably one that I think was disappointed. Oh, actually, Vitinho's not on that list, actually, because I think we produced that just before. Vitinho's not even on that list. That one for me is probably a bit of a. I would have liked to have kept Vitinho. I think Vitinho. Tom, what about you? I think for me, the realistic ones that I would love to have seen play for us, and I know that Audebert and Sander Berge were probably the ones. I think I would have liked to have kept O'Shea because his partnership with Steve was looking really good. Zarore, Vitinho, and probably Amdouni. I think they're the ones for me that I would have liked to have kept. And I thought we could have really pushed on with those.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I suppose the trouble that you have is the ones that you want to keep are the ones that other people want to buy because they're the best players. So, you know, I think you said all along that we were never going to keep Audebert. If someone comes in with 25, 30 million, you're going to sell him, aren't you? I think, like you said, I don't think it's so much the personnel that have gone. As George said, probably 2/3 of that list, you wouldn't have been desperately disappointed if someone told you at the start of the window they were going to go. The problem is the way the squad's balanced now and the way they did it. So, the Sunderland game, we've effectively forfeited 3 points there. You've seen the way they've started. If at the end of the season we come 3 points behind Sunderland, a lot of that is going to be because of the way we've handled this transfer window. I think if we'd have done all this, the same business before the season had started, everyone would have felt a little bit better about it. Obviously, after the Sunderland game, we still had the continuing rumours about Koleosho, Foster. Obviously, Vitinho ended up going. And I think we're still a little bit light in that area of the pitch. I think it's good that Benson stayed, although, as you're going to come on to,
let's do that now. Let's stick with that. Let's stick with it, Tom. That wasn't a great cameo from him at the weekend. Let's cover that while we're on the subject.
Yes. To me, he's not fit. And if he's not fit, there's no point. I don't really understand why we've put him on. I suppose it's just a lack of bodies. You could see at the preseason, he was in the preseason videos and everything, wasn't he? He's obviously not kicked a ball for a long time. In terms of he's not played first 15 minutes. He's played some friendlies. He's got that goal against Newcastle, but whether it's because he's not had match action or because he's carrying a knock or something, whatever it was, but he clearly wasn't fit. He come on and he spent most of the game walking about on that right hand side, and then obviously he's gone down with whatever he's gone down with. I'm not a doctor. I don't know whether he could have played on or not. I'm assuming that he wouldn't have come off if he could have carried on. The amount of time it took him to come off was frustrating at that time in the game. You just want to get on with it, and you think if you can't play on, just get off the pitch then. But to me, the issue was that he's not fit, and that's again, this is the thing we're coming back to in terms of how the squad's been left and the way that it's been done in terms of the timings.
Yeah.
For me, I would have kept it early. I was glad in the end that we have got probably 3, maybe 4 wingers. It depends where you're going to play Sarmiento and Fleming. Are they number 10s or are they wingers or are they both? I'm not sure. But we've got
Fleming
Anthony,
can play all across the front four, can't he?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the same for Sarmiento. So I guess it just depends where Parker sees them playing. But the first 3 games we've played Vitinho there. So he's not a winger for me anyway, so I'm not that bothered that and to be honest, I'm not that bothered that he's got in general. But you can see how kind of lax our options are there now, especially with Benson having pulled up there, and we're going to need to get him up to speed, and we're going to need to do it quick because we haven't got enough there, in my opinion. We certainly haven't got enough up front. If there's an injury to Foster at any point, we're really struggling, aren't we? Because I don't know, would you play Fleming there at number 10? At centre forward, maybe. I think we've seen from Rodriguez, his legs have gone. I think it's one season too many for him, unfortunately. I don't really understand letting Obafemi and Twine go if we didn't have cover in those positions. I suppose you could say Fleming probably does cover the Twine position, but I don't think we've got enough at centre forward. So I don't really understand letting Obafemi go and not bringing a replacement in there. I don't understand letting Drury go if we need. Yeah, true, but where are we in January? Do you know what I mean? It depends what the targets are as well. I mean, I've seen a few people saying they wouldn't be surprised if Parker's been told, look, sorry, we've left you a bit of a mess this season. If we can get top 6, that's great, but we're happy to give it 1 year and then try and go back up, which is what the line was about.
I'd be very surprised if that's true, given the leverage used to pay for the club and given the losses that the club have to absorb being in the Championship and the new financial rules as well. I will be amazed if any manager is given, you're all right, don't try and get promoted this year. I cannot see that being a thing, Tom.
Well, I'm not saying don't try and get promoted, but it's not the end of the world if we don't get promoted. But the thing is, if you're desperate to go back up this season, then they've made a real bodge job of this transfer window, haven't they? Because it's gone from being a sure thing. And I appreciate that we couldn't have sustained the squad that we had in the first 2 games because the wage bill had been too high, got players who want to leave, etc., etc. I've no problem with some of them leaving, but the way it's been done, as I say, we've forfeited 3 league points already. You could argue we've probably forfeited another 2 by having a sort of half-baked team on the pitch on Saturday. If we've got to get promoted, then we're not making it easy for the players or the manager, are we? I mean, they've rectified it a little bit on that last day, but the transfer window could have been handled a lot better. So that, I don't know. I genuinely, I don't know at the minute. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm certainly not confident that we're going to be in the top 2, but I certainly wouldn't rule it out either. It is a weak league. I suppose what we really need to do is see this team now. We've put this team together. It's had 1 game after sort of a day of being assembled. They need a bit of time on the training ground. They've got a tough game next away at Leeds. But then after that, there's a bit of a kind of run of fixtures. So, yeah, I suppose really it's going to be difficult to judge this transfer window until we see what this team is like and how it gets on. But for me, it's not put us in a great place, I don't think. And if we are desperate to get back up, there was a better way of doing it for me.
Yeah, I think it leads us on to where we sit with this, George. Both you and I sit on the fan advisory board, and we're trying to be more interactive with fans and gain opinion and get questions. I think in the stress of the last week, it was really apparent that fans needed an outlet to just raise those questions. And I think we have got some that we can take to the board at the next meeting, which I think is on the 12th of September, isn't it? Something like that. And I think we have to look at this now and go, okay, where we can get rid of some of the emotional driven questions that have been answered by the transfer window. But I guess the question mark still remains, why did the transfer window go the way it did? Why did we go from being a very seemingly settled and good squad with warnings of a few outgoings to balance the books from the Cardiff and Luton games to the unbelievable mass exodus? Do you think it's a fair concern for fans to question the financial viability of the club, or whether this is just actually we've got a handle on the new financial fair play rules? Forgive me, I can't remember off the top of my head what they're now called. And we had to do this, or can we ask the question as to what extent these leaked WhatsApp messages and the sacking / resignation of the under-21 coach played in all of this? I think they're questions that we legitimately can ask.
We spent a couple of seasons a few years ago where our window closed before Europe's because we wanted it before the season started. And look, Europe didn't follow suit. So we can't complain about the squads being fluid for the first few weeks of the season, because that's life, eh? That's how it works. And because of that, teams don't do business for the most part until the final week of the season, and in particular till deadline day. So we should have all appreciated that our business would go down to the wire. And look, it's really unfortunate that we had Sunderland's play in the meantime. Really unfortunate. Yeah, we might have dropped 3 points there, but this team isn't going to be going for record points totals. I'll tell you that right now for nothing. So I just think, I really do think a lot of the criticisms last week was really over the top. And Natalie, you mentioned that the personal attacks. I mean, that it goes without saying that is beyond the pale. But I just think some of the let's say sensible criticisms for me just weren't at it. We needed to trim the squad down. Everyone said that at the start of the summer. Everyone had a right go. We need to get this squad down. And this was the real open heart surgery that this team needed, let me tell you, because it were left in a mess. And I think we're in a better point. But Tom, I'm going to come to you because I'm interested. I think we're quite varied on this. So it'd be nice to hear what you used to say.
Quite varied, isn't it? Underplaying it a little bit.
Speaking as a non-fan advisory board member, and it might you genuinely, I'm having a bit of a dig there, but you genuinely might have a different perspective on this because you get regular communication from the club. But to me, a big reason for the kind of panic and the thinking of what's going on is because there's absolutely zero communication at all from the club. You know, we knew 2 years ago when we came down, there was a lot of headlines in the press about we took this loan out and it needs to be paid off and we're going to have to sell players to pay this loan off. There was none of that this time when we went down. So we've not had any external reporting. But in terms of the financial situation of the club, there's not really any, there isn't any communication, is there? And I'm not suggesting that, you know, that we get a detailed breakdown of spreadsheets and the incomings and outgoings every week in the programme from Alan Pace. But it would have been nice, even if we'd just had a bit of a statement in the summer to say, look, this is where we are.
Don't worry, everything's fine.
Bloated.
Yeah,
just something like that. Just a little bit of communication, because when you see, you know, when you turn up and seeing that squad that we had out against Sunderland, where, you know, basically the whole front six has disappeared, and you're putting right backs up front and all this kind of nonsense. You're thinking, well, what is the plan here then? Like, why have we had to do this? And if it was just a case of, you know, when Amdouni goes, say, they just add a little bit to the statement and just say, look, you know, like they did with Weghorst, say, look, we had an agreement. He's an international player. We've agreed that if we go down, he can go out on loan and we'll see where we are in a year's time. Something like that. It's not difficult, these little bits of communication, and I think they go a long way. Because George said earlier, you know, we've shipped a load of players out who don't want to be here. Do they not want to be here? I haven't got a clue. You know, do they want to be here?
That's only rumour, exactly. Yeah.
This is it. And there was rumours that Koleosho and Foster don't want to be here. I mean, there was rumours that Foster wasn't going to play at Wolves. He came on. I mean, and I'm not, as I say, again, you can't communicate everything from a club point of view. You don't necessarily want Parker coming out in the press and saying X, Y, Z have refused to play and they think I'm useless, or the era and year because Vincent Kompany was in charge and now they want to go and play somewhere else. But do you know what I mean? The communication is so poor from the club, and we are kept in the dark, and that's why these rumours kind of grow. And it's a similar thing with this WhatsApp thing. I mean, if I'm Manuel Benson, say, or Darko Chirlinov, I don't particularly give it. I won't swear. I don't really care what the under-21s academy manager thinks about me. I'm not really interested in. And if it's leaked that the academy manager thinks I'm lazy or thinks I'm overpaid or whatever, I just think I'm not bothered. That, you know, you're the academy manager at the end of the day. You don't have a bearing on where I play. But because there's no communication from the club, we just find out, oh, he's gone. There's no, you know, in the night he's disappeared. There's no club statement. There's no. Rumours grow up, don't they? And that's why I think there's been so much panic and so much fluster in the last couple of weeks of the transfer window. I don't think people are being stupid or getting carried away. I think all they're seeing is what's being reported by Sasha, what's being reported by other football journalists. They're putting 2 and 2 together, and they might be making 5. But you know, we were all looking at that and thinking, do you know what? Are our finances really that bad? Because you know, the last accounts release, we've got an 81 million deficit on there. You know, if you're in a Premier League club, that's a perfectly manageable level of debt. if you go down and you sell millions worth of players like we have this summer, it's a perfectly manageable level of debt. I don't particularly think, God, we're one season away from going bust or anything like that. But I don't know that. That's kind of an educated guess on my part. And they must have spent a good bit of money last year, and they've wasted a good bit of money last year as well. So just something, and I think Pace obviously came out with a statement that was in the programme, but it was pretty, it wasn't very comprehensive, and it didn't really address a lot of the concerns.
It's very heartfelt.
So I just wanted to kind of give that other perspective of it, I don't know if it is a fan advisory board thing that you've got a bit more of an inside track on what the finances are and that kind of thing or not, but speaking for myself as someone who's just consuming the media around the club and doesn't get any word from the club itself, I don't think people are being daft when they're panicking and thinking, what the hell is the plan here? Surely it wasn't the plan to be playing with Sharandi Sambo and Luke McNally as the super subs coming on to rescue the points against Sunderland. So when things are clearly are suboptimal and there's no communication, then people will fill in the gaps and people will panic. But it does seem, I think the last day, the deadline day incomings of the feeling around the club is a lot better. I think
Definitely.
the helicopter, the Ian Fleming saga has put a bit of a better mood. And if we win the next 3 games, it'll all be forgotten about. But I think you're a bit harsh, George, coming across and saying people are being stupid and people are asking for no reason. Because I think people did have good reason to, maybe not to panic, but to question, what was coming out of the club. And we might, or people who were worried might still be proven, if not 100% right, at least that they weren't a million.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Tom. I think where I've got to in the middle is that I'm leaning more towards Tom than I am George. I think those of you who will seen a post that I put out there just asking as an outlet for people to raise their questions. I think where I'm going to handle this is just to summarise the mood of that transfer window and try and, put it to the club that you've got to bear in mind that a lot of these comments were, you've got to remember what that time and space felt like for us. As Tom said, we're not privy, and even fan advisory, we don't have financial information. We're not given that information. You as the board and as the people who run the club, you are privy to that information. You know what's happening. You might not be panicking because you've got all the facts and you know it. We don't as fans. And as much as a chairman loves the club and as much as ALK are committed to it, you will never love the club as much as we do. You'll never be a bigger fan than we are because we've been here since day one. It's in our DNA. So I'm going to put together, if anybody hasn't yet submitted their questions, please do. I'll repost it before the meeting. I think I'm going to summarise them in a very sensible way and just explain to the club why some of these questions were being raised and what the feeling was at the time and how much of that has perhaps been superseded. But I think the communication one is probably the biggest one. The only thing we heard in that entire transfer window was Russell's tweet asking us all to just calm down and trust the process. And I really like Russell. We've worked with him for a long time and I know exactly where that tweet came from and I know exactly what he was trying to do and the place of what he was trying to do with that. I'm not saying anything that I wouldn't say to his face. I think it was possibly misjudged, but he'll know that and he'll know from the reaction from that. But I also know what he was trying to do. But Tom's absolutely right. There could have been better ways of communicating a calming message, I think, to a fan base that was getting more and more distressed by the day with all they had was an inflammatory Twitter echo chamber full of, in the know accounts, reposting everything left, right and centre. So let's see where that goes. We will be sensible, but we will also be respectful to fans' concerns at the same time. That's what we're here for, and we'll try and see what we can get out of that. I'm going to wind it up now. Let's wrap this up. We've got an international break coming. We're all keen to go and get us tea and to carry on for the evening. We end this podcast with just the results of a quick poll. We put a poll in the field following the Blackburn game, asking you what your revised predictions were, where Burnley will finish now this season based on performances today, the transfer window being closed and the start of a proper new Scott Parker era. 14% of you still think we can win the title. Bravo you. I'm very impressed with your commitment to enthusiasm. 32% of you still think we'll get automatic promotion, put us in the top 2, which is an impressive one. 48% think that we are just going to make the playoffs. That's obviously still great, but there'll be a playoff contenders. And 6% of you just wanted to put other comments. And we had some things like it's too early to say. Mid-table, some people had. A lot of people saying we've got no idea who's going to look like going to score in every week. I think that's probably going to be rectified by Fleming and the other players coming in. Lacking a goal scorer, we'll probably get one in January, to be honest. But a lot of people are suggesting that we might end up at mid-table. Listeners, let us know what you think. What are your hopes now for the rest of the season from this Clarets squad? Do you think that we can still get the title? Are we Championship playoff contenders, or will we just be mid-table? I cannot see a scenario where we're mid-table, but you know what? All opinions are valid. It's an opinions game. Drop us a comment underneath video. Contact us on social media. Do get involved in this week's show. That is your talking point for this week. Where are Burnley going to end up this season? My thanks go to my colleagues Tom and George for their company this evening and for analysing where we are. Listeners, it's been a pleasure as always. We will be having a break off this week, but keep an eye out for a special podcast by our very own George Poole, who's going to be reviewing something very exciting that's now available. That will go out next week. And Dave and I will be back with a preview show a week on Friday, looking ahead to that crucial clash away at Leeds. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.
The No Nay Never podcast is brought to you in association with the talkSPORT Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The Analysis Show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby, and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonaynever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners talkSPORT. We are proud to be associated with the talkSPORT Fan Network.